Hello, and welcome to another episode of DCU Daily. And today we are talking about Superman Legacy. It's a movie that, well, it's been in development for a long time. We know that. James Gunn has basically gotten the script to a point where he's now ready to take it into a table read with the cast and the crew, which, the first time everybody comes together. I'm sure if you've paid any attention over the last, I don't know, like 5, 10 years, studios have made a bigger deal out of that stuff, especially showing behind the scenes footage on like the Blu-ray version, or if on Disney Plus or a streaming service, you'll have some extras, and you will see when the cast came together and started to really focus on and read the script for the first time. And usually, as if you've made a movie yourself, even if you made a short film and you did a table read, you know that in that process, you usually can find areas of improvement. Some things sound better, some things don't sound quite as well as you thought they would once you have it read out loud, especially with the actors who are cast in the role doing that reading out loud. So a table read is a essential part of the filmmaking process, and it's the part of the process that Superman Legacy has finally arrived at. They're getting pretty close to the time when they'll be walking onto a set and starting production proper, but right now they're in the final stages, costume fittings, all of that stuff. And Nathan Fillion gave us some insight recently. So to talk about that, and then maybe gain some more insight from his comments, as well as comments from other cast members like Rachel Brosnahan, who's going to be playing Lois Lane. I've got with me today, as always, John. How are you doing today?
Great. Yeah, but definitely a table read was definitely some exciting news because I don't know, just anything about this kind of, getting faster and faster towards filming is exciting. So yeah, a table read is definitely, a good and exciting step for all this. And so, Nathan Fillion confirming that really good, and I really liked that. But the thing that I honestly got more excited about was him confirming his specific costume fitting, which I really really liked because for two reasons. One, again, it adds to that sort of excitement. Like, okay, we're seeing uh Guy Gardner on screen proper. We don't count the god awful TV pilot from the 90s because that just doesn't count. So we're getting that awesome suit. Definitely the best Green Lantern suit in my opinion. Such a great suit. And then on top of that, the fact that there is going to be a costume fitting holds out hope that it won't be like the Green Lantern film of 2011 with Ryan Reynolds, that it's just going to be all CGI. I know it makes sense for the character, but it's nice that we're actually getting a physical suit. So I think that's for me personally, that's the more exciting part. But a table read, obviously, that confirms, various scripts, sorry, misspoke. That confirms the script from the various threads and tweets we've gotten from James Gunn, like, oh, he's almost there, especially when he just finished Peacemaker, writing season 2 of Peacemaker. So that's exciting. But for me personally, is we're getting that costume fitting, which is, I feel like, with James Gunn, who cares, it feels like, who cares about, like, the comic book look and accuracy. We're getting that bomb ass green leather jacket that is just so awesome. So I can't wait to see it easily. I'm so excited for like Superman and Guy Gardner. Easily, I can't wait for to see those two suits. Well, one again and one proper in live action.
Yeah, it's also one of my favorite moments about the whole build up around Nathan Fillion being cast in the role, and the social media reaction was James Gunn got asked by one of the fans, like, what about the haircut and stuff? And James Gunn was like, yeah, I mean, putting Nathan Fillion in a bowl cut is like probably one of the biggest reasons why he's looking forward to this whole experience. So I can't wait to see that. Obviously, if you've watched the Guardians movies, well, specifically the most recent one, yeah, Nathan Fillion's not afraid to play a goofy character.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, and of course he was in the Suicide Squad. Was he TDK, the detachable
Yeah,
kid?
the detachable
Who,
kid who isn't
yeah,
dead, but not like that matters because the DCU is done. But we
right,
know from James Gunn that the detachable kid is not technically dead. So Nathan Fillion still exists and is alive in both universes. So
yeah,
exciting,
that's
I
that's
guess.
fun. Yeah, I mean, hey, who knows? Maybe there could be a situation where one actor plays two characters in this universe, and then they come across each other, and they're like, they have that whole pointing at each other moment. That wait, I know you, or oh, you look like anyway. That would be fun. I think James Gunn wouldn't be, it wouldn't be beyond his creativity and imagination to do something like that. But yeah, I'm really excited about this. What about some of the other cast members? I believe have also been talking about the script, and then I think we're starting to finally get some quotes, and which is great. Of course, we've been hearing James Gunn mention it across his socials and answering fans' questions. But um, you mentioned before we started that Rachel Brosnahan had a few comments about the script as well. She, of course, has read it by now. So, what did she have to say?
Yeah, she was just talking about her Lois Lane. Not sure when it was dated. I'm sure it was recently. But yeah, how she's excited to play her version of the character. She, is kind of following the line of like the more modern iteration of the character, who's grown to be like the fierce reporter, but also has that like softer human side that like Superman brings out over the course of their relationship with one another. And I'm excited to see that as well. She has ironically big shoes to fill in terms of the current iteration of Bitsy Tulloch from Superman and Lois, who is my personal favorite Lois Lane. And honestly, Tyler Hoechlin might be my favorite Superman because they're just so perfect in their roles. So she definitely has big shoes to fill there. But yeah, Rachel Brosnahan saying she's excited to play her iteration, and I'm excited because, like, essentially, I mean, Mrs. Maisel was just essentially Lois Lane, but a comedian instead of a reporter. So it honestly, it just perfectly worked. When I heard the short list way back when, I'm like, and it was literally like probably like a couple weeks, not even after I was just, sitting in my parents were watching Mrs. Maisel and I was sitting in the room and I was like watching. I'm like, oh, okay. Not really my type of show, but I'm like, oh, okay, she seems like a really good actress. And then when it was released, I'm like, okay, just watching one episode of this show that I had no investment in whatsoever. Yeah, she's the perfect Lois Lane. So, like, I think I'm excited for her iteration as well. I'm just excited for some. I feel like a lot of the um cast is like really, just really, really well cast. I mean, Eddie Gathegi and Isabel Merced, they've been in good films in the past, and they've been in, superhero films in the past. So, I'm excited to see, where it all goes. And, I feel like they'll do all this, justice, lack
Yeah,
of a better
yeah,
word.
absolutely. And I think it's been a while since on the big screen we have seen a new iteration of Lois Lane, and so especially for going from Amy Adams' version of Lois Lane, which went through, of course, being directed by multiple different uh, creative visions, and really not having a starring role since Man of Steel truly in the DCEU. So we had her introduced and be one of the stars in 2013, and then over the course of the next 10 years, she always had just bit parts, really, whether it was the theatrical version of Justice League, Batman versus Superman, where she did play a pretty big role, but it's a darker movie, so her character was also not quite that classic Lois Lane, that Margot Kidder version that a lot of people still harken back to as say, well, that's a definitive Lois Lane that we want to see. And even in the Zack Snyder's Justice League, I think we got more of her, but like still, it was like she was mourning the death of her to be husband, like as we find out for for the majority of the movie. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how Rachel Brosnahan takes the character in a new direction, the kind of direction which, like you said, um, what basically Rachel Brosnahan herself has said is a modern interpretation of the character. She's not really gonna be playing the role exactly the same way that Margot Kidder did. She's also not going to be, what we saw in Lois Lane. She's oh, sorry, not Lois Lane. Amy Adams is Lois Lane. She's also going to maybe, she's not gonna really play the version that you see in the Superman Lois TV show because obviously, unless we find out otherwise, it doesn't look like Superman and Lois Lane, Clark Kent and Lois Lane have really gotten that far in terms of knowing each other and having a family. So we're gonna get a very different version. I'm excited to see just how experienced this Lois Lane is as a journalist. Like, is she starting out? Is she the star of her, in her field? Like, she's one of the faces of the Daily Planet. Like, in Man of Steel, she was introduced as basically probably the most credible reporter at the planet, to the point where she could ask for a chopper to go fly across the Gotham City, and
Yeah.
she
I mean,
had that kind of
she had
sway.
won a Pulitzer by that point, so
Exactly. So,
yeah,
like, I'm interested in seeing, like, where in her career progression are we going to see this Lois Lane? Is this going to be a character that's still going to be proving herself, and then Clark Kent kind of comes into the picture? I know historically they've always sort of leaned into, let's have a very experienced journalist Lois Lane, and then let's bring in Clark Kent, because it helps to kind of contrast, the two's approach
right,
towards journalism, because Lois Lane has always got that certain pragmatic side to her, because she's been in the business long enough to kind of know how things go, and maybe like get the information she's looking for, but maybe sometimes not in the most earnest of ways, because she knows that's how journalism works sometimes. Whereas Clark Kent is, of course, like a total rookie, and that's how it was treated in Henry Cavill's iteration in Man of Steel. That's how it was treated with Christopher Reeve's iteration back in the 70s and the 80s.
right,
So I'm excited to see, like, where this starts us off with both characters dynamic against each other, as well as, of course, Lois Lane herself, because we know this universe is gonna already be brimming with superheroes, and things are, it's going to be common to see metahumans walking around, and so that also adds a different layer of reality that we really have not seen in live action DC before. Like, in back in the Superman days with Christopher Reeve, there was one superhero, and that was Superman. In the DCEU, it was really, we kicked off with Man of Steel, and then it changed things, and we saw some repercussions in BVS. But yeah, there's so much here that allow, in terms of the world that this character is going to inhabit, that's going to allow for Richard Brosnahan to kind of create something new that's going to feel different and fresh, and that's what I'm excited about. And of course, like you said, there's a lot to live up to, whether you take Bitsy Tulloch's iteration, whether you take Margot, not Margot, but yeah, Margot Kidder's iteration. Um, am I actually pronouncing her name wrong? Yeah, no, it's correct, Margot Kidder. I was like, Margot Robbie, right? I'm not. No,
no, no,
I
no,
was.
no,
No, no, of course it's not Margot Robbie. I was like, wait, am I like combining the two names for some reason? Anyway, brain freeze. Um, but as I was saying, there's a lot of different versions of the character to draw from. I even think that, what was it, the New Adventures of Clark Kent and Lois Lane, the TV show from, was it the late '90s or early 2000s?
yeah, with Dean Cain and Terry Hatcher. Yeah, I
Yeah,
haven't watched the show, but I've heard that she's also, like, definitely, like, one of the more underrated Lois Lanes.
yeah, I really liked her iteration.
Yeah,
I mean, I like that show as a whole. I think Dean Cain is one of the more underrated actors to have ever played the character of Superman. I mean, granted, the show kind of feels dated now, and in terms of the budget that it had and the scale at which it operated, it was a TV show in the late '90s. I mean, like, what are you gonna do? Like, it's not,
right.
it wasn't like a primetime network TV show, or like an HBO kind of a show either. So, in fact, I think, like, they had Dean Cain cameo in at least one of the crossovers in the Arrowverse. Like, I don't know whether he,
Well, he was
played a Superman.
the adopted father of Supergirl in Supergirl, so I
That's
know
what it
that.
was.
Yeah,
That's
so
what
he
I'm
had a
thinking about.
relatively small
Mm,
role, but it was smaller because I think it was like the DEO, like, found out that he was fostering Supergirl, or, Kara, and then they had forced him to work for them, and then he eventually, like, disappeared. But yeah, so Dean Cain and then Helen Slater, who played the original Supergirl, were her adopted parents. So yeah, that was essentially that.
yeah, and then Terry Hatcher came back in Supergirl. She played like Rhea,
She
which
played a
she was.
villain. Yeah, she played
Yeah,
Mon-El's evil mother, along with
yeah,
Kevin Sorbo, who played his father, I believe. So it
yeah.
was definitely a weird reunion of sorts, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think their intention was, let's kinda, like, bring them back in the
Get
fold.
yeah, bring Hercules in there too, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure how much of that we're gonna see with this new DCU, and that's a good point to actually maybe, I don't know, like, we don't need to go on this tangent for very long, but maybe just discuss it briefly. I'm wondering because so far we've gotten a lot from the movies casting in terms of like where they're headed. Of course, we know actors like Nathan Fillion, Eddie Kategi. Like, you've got these new actors who have never been a part of any DC project. Maybe they've done other superhero projects before, but not really with DC.
Yeah,
Um, what about bringing back some of these old actors who have played relatively iconic or, just absolutely iconic roles who are still around, and maybe they can fit somewhere else in the universe, like what the Arrowverse used to do. I know the Arrowverse kind of leaned into it too hard at times, and
yeah.
it seemed a little over the top and maybe not quite. They sometimes didn't really consider whether they were casting the role appropriately, as opposed to we just gotta bring in somebody that you're gonna get a pop from the fans, which is something that Marvel has been blamed for in recent years as well. So, do you think that James Gunn is gonna, if he does go down this route of bringing some of those actors in, I believe that he's gonna probably bring them in if they really fit a role that he wants them to come in for, and it just happens to be that they were in the previous, a DC project. But also, like, where do you potentially see any kind of opportunities that a past actor from a DC project can return in a different role?
I
Outside of the
think
obvious, like, the big Justice League actors, but, like,
right.
yeah.
I think here's the thing. I think with how Marvel is kind of going with heavy reliance on older actors, because we've gotten Spider-Man No Way Home. We're gonna get Deadpool and Wolverine. We just got that trailer at the Super Bowl, which is bringing back what seems like every Fox X-Men character. So I feel like at the very least for James Gunn, I feel like the fanboy in him wants to have like a bunch of like these older actors appear, but he's also heavily reliant on the story of it all, and how he's like, I want, like, how he doesn't want to, green light a release date until they have a script, until they have like a proper like rough draft, and then we go from there. So I feel like he would probably want to, and maybe eventually will sparingly, but I feel like with a movie that he already said is going to follow a lot of like the Christopher Reeve Superman stuff, which has its own pros and cons. So I feel like adding in like actual actors into it would be a little bit too much. And he probably wants this to stand on its own 2 feet. We're building a universe. We're building its own universe outside of this. And on top of that, he's already including 3 actors from the previous universe into this universe.
Right, that's
So
true. That's a good
he
point.
he probably wants,
Yeah,
I bet, like, because I mean, he's a fanboy at heart. Like, he
yeah,
is a comic book fan at heart. So he's like, I want to cast like Burt Ward as this character. I want to cast Michael Keaton as this character. I want to just so. And speaking of Michael Keaton, who came back as Batman, was in DC's arguably biggest failure. So he probably wants to
yeah, but, like, I wouldn't
steer
say,
clear
like,
from
that
that.
disqualifies him, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I know. I
I
just
think
feel
most
like,
people can differentiate, like, if whatever success that movie did have, I think a lot of it could be attributed to Michael Keaton. My
oh, I apologize
so,
for yawning, but yeah, I think I'm just trying to. He's like, even though he is the more creative side, he's like kind of trying to,
yeah,
try to kind of look at it from business. Okay, let's not have too much of the past. Let's have it,
yeah,
be its own film and build its own universe first. I think
yeah.
that's what he wants to do.
Yeah, I think well, not I think, I know I agree with that statement because James Gunn has made it pretty clear that he wants this new DCU to have its own identity. And I think the priority is to kind of give this new DCU its own identity before you start harkening back and getting some cameos. And even when they do go after those cameos, I really don't think they want to do that in a way where, like, like you said, they don't want to. lean into something and just do a cheap pop kind of a cameo. They want to do something where it makes sense. Like for example, Michael Keaton, you brought up a great point. Of course, he was part of a project that flopped pretty hard, but it was a larger trend that DCU was on its way out, and pretty much a lame duck franchise by the time the Flash came out already. So you can give it attribute it to a death by a thousand cuts. But Michael Keaton as an actor is still at the peak of his prime. Like God, like it's like J.K. Simmons and Michael Keaton. Like they don't seem to age in terms of their acting chop. Sure, you physically they look older than they were maybe 20 years ago. It's not like Tom Cruise, who like even at 60 probably looks like he's 35. Although I think in recent years he started to age, show his age a little bit. But the
Hmm.
point I'm trying to make is you look at what Michael Keaton did in Spider-Man: Homecoming as the Vulture. I think that just in that movie alone, Michael Keaton easily, in my opinion, entered into the top 5 of greatest all-time MCU villains. That I mean, that's not saying too much about the MCU because MCU is known for like really, one-dimensional bad villains, and so there's only so many that you can put in that really top tier. But to kind of put Michael Keaton up there in a movie, again, in a tier where he's compared to Josh Brolin's Thanos, the most hyped up character who had 8 movies of build up before, more than that actually, before Josh Brolin really got to inhabit the character. So there was a mythos built around it. So kind of helps you as an actor that you don't have to really, introduce yourself to the audience and then really build up the gravitas over your performance. Some of that is already done for you. And not to say that, he didn't do a great job. But with Michael Keaton, what you got was just this character who also in that movie the biggest twist when when Peter Parker finally realizes who his this guy is, and he's like is the father of the girl that he's dating, and he's also that moment in the car where he like casually threatens Peter Parker. I'm like, okay, like yeah, absolute genius move to bring Michael Keaton in and have him do what he's done here. And of course, he'll always tell you he is Batman. And you know what? Power to him. Nobody is going to disagree with the fact that Michael Keaton is still Batman. But I could really see him like in some spot, like whether it's a villain that is a one-off or whether he's a recurring character. Like, I'm so glad you brought his name up because I think if there is somebody who they can bring back, and I know they're probably gonna have to wait a little bit because, of course, fresh in the mind in the Flash and such, they probably won't be bringing him back anytime soon. But I would love to see him be a part of this universe, play another character, maybe. Of course, he's already played Birdman and Batman, so maybe there's another um, bird slash the bat is not really a bird technically, right? A bat is what a
Flying
is it a mammal?
mammal.
Mammal? Yeah, yeah. Well,
Maybe.
maybe he could play. Maybe he can voice Gorilla Grodd.
True.
That could be an option. I don't know. Um, but I don't understand. I don't think it would be good to like bring him back as the father of a character, or like what the CW used to do a lot. I think you'd want to give him a role where he gets to really play somebody significant. He's too
Right.
talented an actor, and I think he's got too much of a history with DC to not be in that position. But yeah, there's a lot to consider. Of course, getting back to the main story, the cast meeting up with a table read. Just to kind of like to wrap things up, I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts and predictions about where things will go next in terms of we'll start probably hearing from the cast members from the James Gunn. Do you expect to see a lot of like behind the scenes images? Do you think they're going to kind of keep things quiet? And also, knowing James Gunn as a filmmaker, do you think these table reads are going to lead to a lot of changes in the script? Because obviously, through the table read, you get to find out like what's working, what's not working. Or do you
Yeah.
feel like this is at this point just a matter of you want to hear the script more so than just read it, and then you get into production, which we're getting very close to. They're going to be in Atlanta starting production next month.
I think maybe like he'll maybe do some tweaking to see if like, you know, kind of like have like a dialogue or dialogue monologue that could fit the actor and what like play to their strengths. I think, kind of tweak it that way a little bit. But yeah, I think what we might get is like maybe like a picture of like everyone around the table, kind of, cut people out that they don't want to, leak or anything like that. So, like anything like that, I think we might get like a picture. And I know in the past we've gotten like a very like harsh close up of like a costume, so we might get that. But even then, I think James Gunn is, when it comes to the actual like filming, I think he'll be more so ironclad because so many people ask him so many questions on threads. And so I think he might actually try to keep the filming under wraps as much as he can because he wants to keep all of that, I feel, a surprise. So I think we might get like a picture of the table read, maybe like a behind the scenes like video of like everyone sitting down. Maybe that's it. Or he'll maybe confirm on threads like, "Oh, table read went really good. Have some tweaking to do. I'll go do that." And then something like that, and then that would pretty much be it. And then obviously the official announcement that it'll start filming sometime in March. I think it's supposed
Yeah.
to be mid to late March is when they're officially going to start filming.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's a good way of putting it because most definitely we're gonna see probably that picture of the cast all together in one big space, and the crew, like the director, producers, the writers. That's it always reminds me because I know it's not the only instance of something like this happening in terms of like how they marketed the movie, but I keep going back to in my mind The Force Awakens when like that Star Wars cast, especially the original cast members, like the J.J. Abrams and Kathleen Kennedy, they shared this picture, big picture, and you have like of course Leia, Princess Leia, Luke Skywalker, Han Solo. I'm going by the character names, but like all the actors are there,
Right.
and as long as we don't have a situation where we end up with, Mark Hamill's character, like Luke only shows up for not even 5 minutes, like for 5 seconds at the end of the movie. As long as you don't end up with one of those situations where you see them at the table read, and then later on we find out they only have like half a scene, which Mark Hamill himself has like said like he was like they made it seem like I was in the movie, except that I was like in there for like 5 seconds at the end. Um, so I'm like, what did you do for like 99% of the table read? He just sat there and listened,
He
or
didn't even have any lines. He just
he didn't
like
have any. Yeah, he turns around like, what?
like Daisy Ridley during the table where he just stare at him like
Yeah.
really intently, like
And he takes off he takes a hood off and he stares back at her and then and scene and like we're done, like clap, and it's just like what was going on there. But as long as you don't end up with something like that, which I doubt we will, because especially if you go by the castings that have been confirmed, I think everybody's going to have a role to play, and of course the one big thing I'm looking forward to is seeing the cast members that have not been confirmed. Like it may just be that if we do get a picture, there may be cast members there. We recognize those people, but we have no idea what they're playing. Then the speculation begins. You start to kind of fill in the pieces, and maybe we'll get it right, maybe we won't, or maybe we get those announcements in the lead up to that kind of an image being released, because of course you don't necessarily want to make it public until you have all the details finalized, which I assume if they're about to do a table read, that stuff is already taken care of or is in the process of being taken care of. So, yeah, I mean, when that happens, I mean, I'm sure we'll be here talking about it. John, you're gonna probably share some juicy details that we can go over, and then hopefully get some insight from and see where things will go next. So guys, let us know in the comments, of course, what do you think about this. Nathan Fillion just mentioned that he is going to be getting his costume fittings done for Guy Gardner. He's also going to be part of that big table read with the cast and crew of Superman Legacy next week, so it's coming up fast, and then the production on the movie is going to start in March. And of course, as you know, with these kind of projects, once the ball goes, start rolling downhill, things will fly. And before you know it, it's going to be July of 2025, and and we'll be going to the movie theaters to watch Superman Legacy. So let us know in the comments what you think about that. And then, of course, if you like our content, if you like the topics we're talking about, if you like the way that we talk about it, then hit the like button and subscribe for coming back here for more stuff like this. We'll be back tomorrow, and then for the rest of the week with more updates. Any kind of breaking news, we'll be here covering it. And of course, we'll be looking at some other upcoming projects from the DCU, including things like Peacemaker, Creature Commandos, and of course any other news that comes out, from whether it's from James Gunn's account answering a fan's questions, or official press release, or something in Deadline or The Hollywood Reporter or Variety, we will be covering that. So you can keep checking back here for more content on DCU Daily. And until next time, go out there and watch something DC related, and then come back here and talk to us about it. We'd love to hear your thoughts.